What is up, Survivor Socialites? Welcome back to Survivor Social, the Survivor podcast where we focus on the social element of the game. My name is Tegwith, and we have an incredible guest today. Jake O'Kane, baby girl, is with us in the house. How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing great, Teg. I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy we got one of the better episodes of Survivor 48. At least one of the better post-merge episodes of Survivor 48. I think that's fair to say. I'm excited to break it down.
I'm so stoked. Sadly, Kara's not with us today, but Jake and I are going to hold on the fort, and we just can't wait to get into it with you all. As a reminder, we are live at in a couple of places right now. So if you want to chat with us in the comments, we love the questions. We love all of that good stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as always. Jake, let's get into it. I first want to start off by saying, you started off by saying like this was one of the better episodes. What was it that got you excited this episode? Was it just how it ended, or the lying of it all? What was the main thing in this episode that was like, that's it?
I think it's the first time we've seen, Joe and Eva's apple cart upset a little bit this whole time. Because even with like the David vote previously, where we could say, everything didn't work out their way, they were still, I felt like, very involved in that decision to boot David. And so, you see a little bump in the road for them. And it's, because a lot of this post-merge has been, Joe and Eva driving, and everyone else is just like, not that everyone's doing this, but essentially the front story is they're driving and they're taking their alliance to the end. And if you're not in it, you're out. Yeah. And Shaheen's been in it, and now he's out.
Yeah, I think that was really crazy for me. I also got really excited about just seeing Kyle and Camila actively work together again. I feel like we got that really early on, and then there was a lot of stuff where I'd post about how much I love Kyle and Camila on the internet, and everybody be like, "What are they even doing?" And obviously, like Survivor isn't just the big, like. You're doing something every single episode. It's like we saw Shaheen early on. It's in the little moments, right? And so I feel like this was an episode of a lot of little moments that Kyle and Camila were able to put together to, you're exactly right, upset the apple cart against Joe and Eva specifically, and obviously Shaheen, who ended up getting the boot. I thought it was just kind of crazy. And the fact that there was no fact checking, not real fact checking, wild to me. I think it's wild that if you think you're that close with somebody, I feel like you go, "Hey man, have you been hiding an idol from me this whole time? Just be upfront about it." That's what I think. What do you think that would work?
I'm kind of with that, just based on, when Joe found out about that, it was after he won immunity. And then also knowing that Eva has an idol on her that can be played till 5. They could have, shored up. They could have, really fact check that and still been safe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because even if Eva's able to protect herself, like let's say, you know what, I'm gonna confront Shaheen and hopefully we can, flush this idol, we're safe. And then I think it looks good for Joe and Eva in front of the jury in terms of like, I believe in the theater of tribal council. I think if you can do that, I didn't work out for me. But I think when you do that and you have those bomb drop moments and you make a show for the people who are on the jury, and that show sells, I think that's a good thing. And I think Joe and Eva really could have taken advantage of that moment. But it's also a different season too. If they're setting the narrative of, loyalty wins the game and, strength is the driving theme of the season. Maybe they don't see that as much of an option.
Yeah, and I also think the big thing, like one of the big things about this season is just like everything, at least with Joe and Eva, is out in the open. There is not a single thing that they are hiding. Obviously they're hiding it from some people. Like Eva early on wasn't telling like for example, Star, that she knew that Star had an idol. But there were other things that like they really just shared. Like Eva immediately hits the beach after she goes on the journey and is like, "You guys could have used that because it was, this and this, but I couldn't use it, so I didn't take it." Or, she told people about the safety without power. There's not much that is hidden, and that duo could not be more overt, right? And so I think there's something about like them feeling like because everything is really out in the open, that maybe that's their move. Like they're looking at it like, if we can everything is so open and everything is so clear, maybe from their perspective, they're like, well, if they're not getting us out, that we must be doing something right. Maybe our social game is so good. Maybe their people are loyal to a fault.
Mm.
And so maybe in that way, they specifically are okay with not having a flashy idol, because maybe they're viewing it, maybe Eva's viewing it as, hey, not having to use an idol and going to the end with a very clear idol is maybe a way to quote unquote use the idol, which I don't think will go over well by the jury, but I do think it's kind of an idea if that's if that's what they're thinking, which I don't know, but I just don't think that juries, with bar some examples, but take to, yeah, good job, you got something. That's not really what we're here about.
Yeah, I think like you mean the pulling out the idol at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it only works in cases of like if Eva gets to the final three and says, I've had an idol this whole time, everyone knew about it. There's no ball drop there. Like, I mean, how I kind of view it, it's, you have power and you're like, oh, I didn't need it though. But you also have power in your hand and can use it to make your position better. And then I think the argument that Eva has to make if she's sitting there is that it was impossible to make my game better.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I do think that was at least, like, I love Austin, I love D, but like I said after the game, like I would have broken the tie for D, is because I do think like if you're sitting on things, then Austin didn't have to play anything for a really long time, but he also didn't use it to better his position when there was some major threats in the game. Not that he should have, I don't know, I didn't play that game, but I do think that if you're sitting on something, you have the ability to do something and make your position better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that isn't looked kindly upon the jury as much.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think it's interesting to think about also this episode. We see obviously Shaheen's the one who goes out. Shaheen, we saw I was convinced that it was going to be either Joe, Kyle, or Shaheen winning the game. Just because I thought that they're like looking up at how they were playing the game, and also just at the edit that they were getting, they were all getting some kind of winner upside, where specifically that one episode where everyone was going to Joe, but Shaheen also, it was the David's boot. Kyle was, manipulating. Shaheen was also manipulating, but over a long period of time. And then Joe was still the crux, the important guy in that. So that whole episode, I was like, I'm convinced it's one of these three. But I think it's really interesting to think, like, Shaheen says he goes to the jury and everyone said it would have been you if you went to the end. And I do think that Shaheen was a very big threat. And I think that like kind of the edit was downplaying that a little bit. It reminded me almost of Caroline, how, you talked to the cast about Caroline from season 47 and everyone's like, she was like one of the big threats out there. And so do you think that like, obviously you weren't on the jury, right? You had to preach to the jury. But do you think that like, if you go back to Ponderosa, do people just like say, hey, it was just going to be you to make the, the vote out the blind side a little bit more palatable? Or do you really think that there was a Shaheen winner upside if he was not blindsided here?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a Shaheen winner upside. Like, I think Shaheen, I mean, there's like you just pointed out, Caroline from last season, Caroline had a much bigger chance to win, according to the people who were there, rather than maybe what the casual audience member thought. And like, even from 45, a lot of people could say that about Julie. You ask anyone from 45, Julie was one of the biggest threats to win the game on that beach, but the casual audience viewer might not view it as that. I mean, I think with Shaheen, I think what Shaheen does well, and like, I think why people told him that, and I think, I think we're now might be seeing a little bit of the downfall of Joe, just with him getting the, wool pulled over his eyes with this vote, is that I think people on the jury, I think, and people who are losing Survivor, I'm going to use myself as an example, not on the jury, but did lose Survivor. I think people really appreciate the people who say, you know what, hey, Shaheen, if Shaheen goes to Mary or Shaheen goes to Star or Camila, who might be on the outside of this group, I'll hear you out. Let's see what we want to do. Like, you saw Mary say it a lot. Hey, I'm trying to talk to Shaheen. I think people appreciate, hey, let's talk through the idea. At least you'll let me throw out my ideas and sit down there, even if you're not going to go with me and you're going to vote me out. I think people really like the idea of, I don't want to say placating, but hearing them out. like truthfully hearing them out, even if that isn't the better decision for them at the time. And I think Shaheen did that with Mary. And I think you also saw, I believe Eva and Joe kind of maybe not do that with Mary as much, using the same person. You know, I do think Shaheen had a real shot to win. And I think there's a reason that Kyle and Camila were more intimidated by Shaheen than it made us seem to be intimidated of Eva, who's sitting on an idol.
Yeah. And I think that's also a very good point, because I vividly remember when Star was on the outs at the very beginning of the season, Shaheen was really the only one who seemed to be willing to work with her. Specifically when she found the idol. I remember, like, you know, it was Thomas and Shaheen, I think, that were talking, and they were like, Thomas was like, do we just throw it away? And iconic moment, love. Great idea. Like, I'm glad somebody said it. But, you know, Shaheen seemed to be the person who he played, but he also was listening. I think you said it perfectly, like listening to other people and willing to take in their ideas. He didn't outright say, no, that's crazy to Thomas. He, you know, I think that that is a way to play a social game, because you're not just like being nice and, you know, memorizing everybody's, you know, first cousin's name and all that stuff. You're actively like using them in your game in some way, whether you take in their idea or not. And I think people, just like human beings, like to be heard. That's just truly why we're on a podcast right now. People like to be heard. And so I think that Shaheen was really good at listening, and whether he did it or not, I think, you know, I think it's important for that. So I think he was a very big jury threat. And he was, you know, I think Mitch also, I think he was right about the take on Mitch, not getting out Eva, all of that stuff. I think his takes were pretty spot on some of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Shaheen, people talk about who has like the survivor sparkle. Like, I think like Kelly Nalbandian is a good example of one of them. You know what? People who are just like, people like them. They gravitate towards them. There's nothing you can do about it. They have that. It's the survivor aura. Shaheen has it. Shaheen definitely has it. And I wish we saw, I know we got a lot of confessionals. He was there for a long time, but it almost feels like I wish we got more of him, because he's really like a narrator. He reminds me of like Drew Basile in some ways. Great episode title, by the way, right? Icarus Time?
Icarus Time was so good. So good. And I don't know. So I posted a video before the episode, like analyzing the last two names of the season for the titles, pardon me. And Mike Bloom commented on that video and being like, just saying, Shaheen talked about in his preseason interview that he considers himself Icarus a lot of the time, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh my God, is this Shaheen's boot episode? Please, no. And it was, sadly. But I thought that was super, super interesting. I also want to say, just quick shout out. We've got a couple people here in the comments. Noah says Jake, Daryl, Jake the man. And we also have a couple of interesting, Daryl saying Kyle manipulating the heck out of Joe. Let's talk about that. Is trust, did Kyle weaponize his trust with Joe in this episode?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right? I really think that, and I forget who said, if it was Kyle or Camila, but like they just needed to get one over on them. You know what I mean? It almost feels like, and I was thinking this because like between this episode and the episode before, I'm starting to think, and I think the narrative on Twitter as well as people, I think Joe has come across as more of like the fallen angel kind of character. Like, and one thing about Joe real quick, sorry, intersecting this. Beautiful story. Oh my God. I was like, I have a younger sister, like, God forbid, like, oh my fucking God. Like, beautiful.
That moment was so, I cried. Obviously, I don't know who didn't. I was wondering when they were going to share that part of his story. And this whole episode, oh my God, I think he said at one point, like, this is for you, JoJo, or something. I lost it. I lost it.
It was so good, so touching. And like, I mean, Joe is Captain America. It's something like who, like, you know, a lot of, especially young men, probably want to go out and strive to be like a dude like him. And it's like, you get those human moments on Survivor. And I just wanted to intersect that and just be like, I love Joe. Joe's been phenomenal on TV, and he's been phenomenal. Great episode in terms of like storytelling and human moments. Not strategically for him, obviously. I mean, I think what I really thought about Joe and Kyle pulling the wool over Joe's eyes in this episode is that he's not trying to get Joe out. Even when like it was proposed before the immunity challenge, he's not trying to get Joe out. He wants to keep Joe there. And I like that. And it made me think about the final tribal council jury question from Penner in Survivor Philippines. I feel like Kyle and Camila are attempting to turn Joe and Eva into their oxen metaphor. Do you remember this from Philippines? Am I ringing a bell here?
I vaguely remember it. Can you jog my memory?
Yeah, sure. So Penner doesn't really ask a question so much as he makes a speech, which
classic
I
Penner. Love.
Great Penner. But he says basically final three of Lisa, the other one, and Denise.
The other one
says something along the lines is like, two of you are here running into the Coliseum thinking that all the cheers that you're running into are for you, when in reality the cheers are for the gladiator on the chariot, and you two have been ridden in like oxen. Something along those lines. That was butchering it.
God.
But I think Kyle and Camila are attempting to turn Joe and Eva into their oxen, and I that's what it looked like to me in this moment, in this move, rather than walking arms locked into the Coliseum or final tribal council. The four, I mean, obviously it can't be the four of them, but those guys, they're like, they're taking their spot on the chariot, and pulling one over on them.
And I think especially this episode, you can kind of, that you can see from multiple people that they know that the jury probably isn't looking too kindly, not because they're mad. Some of them I think are, but on the loyalty for loyalty's sake, like what's the strategy, right? And I said this at the very beginning when this started proposed, when this loyalty alliance was proposed. You cannot say that you are going to be a loyal player and I've got my alliances back, especially if you are an alliance of more than two, because it is, you don't know how things are going to shake out. You don't know how there are other variables, being other people in that game that are going to, you can't prove that you're going to be loyal, because you can't guarantee that you're going to be loyal when there are 4 other people in the alliance, but also 5 other people in the game, 6 other people in the game. And you don't know how maybe one person in your alliance you hear is conversing with somebody outside the alliance against you. Are you just going to be okay with that and go down and just be like, I'm good with that? We know that that's not the case, because, David and Shaheen go out because of it. But all that saying you're loyal doesn't, and I truly believe people who say they're going to play a loyal game think they are going to. I truly believe Mike Turner thought he was going to not betray a single soul going to the end, and he was just going to play an honest, loyal game. I truly believe that Joe felt like that as well. But when you have a game like this with so many different variables, something's going to happen, and all people are going to remember is, you said you were going to be loyal to me. You said that, and you didn't. When most of the time people aren't loyal in Survivor. It's just the hypocrisy of that.
I think, I follow you. I think loyalty, right? Because loyalty was a big thing in Survivor 45, and I'm not offended by what the Reba 4 did. They were so effective due to that loyalty. I think when the conversation of loyalty comes up, I think if you're going to play Survivor and you're saying, oh, I'm going to say loyalty and all this stuff, and I think you want to talk about it as being a tool to further yourself in the game, rather than, I'm morally superior to everyone here. Yeah. And I don't think that's how they're intending for it to be loyalty to be framed. But I think that's how it's coming across to some people. And then you have people like Chrissy sitting there being like, well, what? Am I just going to go home? And that's, people don't like that. I think when it's loyalty, if I'm loyal to the people that I'm with, they will help take me further in this game. And I'm not better than you for that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I think it's a little bit the loyalty thing, it can be done well and you can get to the end and win. I just think it needs a little massaging in how it comes across.
Exactly. And also like who was on here that Annika was on, and we were talking about this specific topic, and Annika basically was like, well, I wanted to play a loyal game, and I was like, it was in the conversation, and I said, absolutely. You wanted to be loyal to Rachel, right? You wanted to be loyal to like one or two people. Saying you're going to be loyal to like 10 people is very silly. You know who's played the most loyal game here in right now? Kyle and Camila, because they only have to be loyal to one person. And that trust has been basically like solid iron, you know, it has not been broken. And so I think there is such a thing as a loyal game, but I don't think there's such a thing as a 100% pure honest game. And I think that's where the difference lies. And I think you can be loyal in Survivor and win. We've seen it before. We've seen it many times before. Dee, prime example. She's a prime example. And so, you know, and I think that I'm seeing it over here in the comments. Daryl says David coming for Joe if he makes it to final tribal council. All that Joe is doing is by saying he's an honest guy and he never goes back on his word, which I truly believe he meant to do. And I don't think he's coming up. He doesn't mean this in any kind of like malicious way. It's just he's going to make people upset at him. And this is the part where an emotional jury could come into play and vote less so on, hey, I made it to the finals. Here and here's how I got here, and like looking at A, B, C, D, and like all the facts. And they're going to think, well, you got here and you lied in a way that I didn't like, you know, and that is going to be bad for a game, I think. I
think he's getting the fallen angel narrative, but I do think if he gets to the end, he has a very strong argument to make and he still has a shot to win. You know, I mean, it's how does he, you know, kind of, I don't want to say excuse because I don't even feel like he has to make excuses so much as explain. Like if he comes in, he's like, yeah, I said loyalty, but it was more of a tool rather than, and he like, you know, this is a game of duplicity and this, that, the other thing. I found this would be the best avenue for me to the end. And, you know, you can reframe it and things like that. I do feel like he can get to the end because I think he is I think he can still pull it off, even though, you know, he's kind of not had the best strategic moments throughout the past 2 episodes.
Yeah. Do you think he's going to get that 5th immunity win?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think he's going to tie with Colby?
I
think he's going to. I think he's going to.
I think he can do it. Yeah.
I think he can too.
He can do it.
He's proven that he's very good at a lot of things.
What?
He's proven he's very good at a lot of things. He's not just a one-trick pony.
No.
He's good at he's not great at the spelling, Got Fun Betrayal, but he was able to fix it quick enough that he almost won the second time. You know, he's good at the balancing. He's good at a lot of different things. I could totally see him taking that crown or tying the crown. He could take it too if he won 2 immunities.
What does he have? 3 right now?
He has 4.
He has 4, so he just needs one
away from tying Colby. I believe he has 4. I could be wrong. Here's the thing. Does it count? This is my big hot take. The double winner in the double boot episode. I believe that immunity win is kind of an asterisk for him because yes, he won the immunity necklace, but he lost to David. So if it had been a real immunity, he technically wouldn't have won. So he technically would have 3, but
if it's
because he won it, but
if it's would you? Yeah, I mean, obviously the one like the big conversation about like would it actually be a win was like the big asterisk was Kyle last season, Kyle of 47, and like that was I forget what happened there, but that was weird. But yeah, it's a little bit of an asterisk, but I honestly, in my mind, I'd give it to him.
I you know what? If he gets to 5, he gets to 5. That would be incredible. That would be incredible. Now, do you think there was anything Shaheen could have done to save himself this episode? Because he knew that something hinky was going on. He knew that something was off with Joe. I don't know if you listened to his exit interview, but he said he thought it had something to do with that emotional moment. I believe when they were reading their Letters from Home. And so he thought it had something to do with that and him not like jumping in quick enough or something like that. But do you think other than that, is there something that he could have done to save his hide?
I think here, like you hear Shaheen say in the episode, Joe's is number one, right? We've always been presented that Eva's Joe's number one.
Girls.
But I do think that before Kyle and Camila stirred the pot, Joe would have probably did a little Diva Adaras and been, I have 2 number ones in the game. I would suspect that would be his response. Okay. But I think, yeah, he needed to rope Joe in. And like when you have someone going through an emotional moment like that, I think, to be really fair to Shaheen, that's a really tough, tightrope to walk. Because if Shaheen honestly thinks he's going through something with his sister, it's like, yeah, you want to give him the space. Like, if he's going to snap at me a little bit, it's like, all right, man, like, take your time, do what you need to do. Like, I'm not going to, like, run down your throat right now. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think, like, what he could have done. Like, honestly, like, maybe he could have tried to get it out of Eva and, like, try to like, I don't know. There was no way for him to know. Shaheen's an amazing player. I don't think Kyle and Camila pulling this over on him devalues what Shaheen's been able to do all season at all. Like, this was just a masterclass in that Kyle and Camila put on versus anything Shaheen necessarily did wrong. Because even in his exit interviews, I listened to a couple of them. When he's talking to Kyle at the sanctuary, they're going around, they're talking about everybody. It's not just, oh, we got to go get Joe or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, they went through the whole laundry list of people. Joe's probably off at confessional. That's probably going to take 45 minutes to an hour, So I don't know what he could have done.
At this point, you gotta be playing with pretty much everybody, unless you do want to, we talked about this earlier. Shaheen was not somebody to box somebody out. And I think that, and also in his exit interviews, he say that he was actually working more closely with Kyle and Camila than it showed on the season.
I think was it Kyle and Camila or was it just Camila?
It might have just been Camila. I might have misheard that, but like that is something to think about. Like, and if he is working that closely with Camila, then maybe Kyle's like, hey, we've got this bridge, baby.
Yeah.
I get that you want to, and honestly, Kyle was like, this was what I wanted to talk to him about. But then instead of using it against Joe or Eva or Mitch, he uses it against Shaheen.
Yeah.
Do you think it really all goes back to the bag, the searching of the bag? Kyle said that in the episode, but do you think that's really it? Or do you think it just like Kyle knew that Shaheen was going to be one of his bigger threats to beat him at the end?
I think I think the bag comment from Kyle is just more him convincing himself, like, morally, that's what he needs to do. Is like, I can't really trust Shaheen the next 2 votes. I think strategically it's the right move for Kyle and Camila, because I do think that based on what we've heard from exit interviews, I think Shaheen might have been a bigger threat, one of the bigger threats still left in the game. Now, I think I don't think Shaheen really made a huge mistake, because you want to talk about if Shaheen doesn't go through, hey, here are all the options left on the board. Kyle goes, well, why'd you leave off that as an option? I don't think there's any, like, other than maybe managing threat level, but you're at final 6. You know what I mean? If you're not in a good position to win the game at that point, like, that's not a position you want to be in either. So I think it's like very fine-tuned thing that it's tough to criticize anything Shaheen did that bad.
Yeah. And I mean, when you get blindsided, you get blindsided. Like, sometimes you're just good at the game and you just end up going out. And I think that, he was a big threat, and I think he would have, had a really good chance to win. Whether or not he would have won, an immunity or whatever, I do think he would have had a good chance to win. Now, he did win reward. We did see that. This is the cursed reward. Letters from Home, maybe don't try to win this one, but Franny has said multiple times on the podcast, she goes, it's easy to say not to win something when you're sitting at home, but when you're in it and you're competitive and you're on Survivor, you want to win.
I'm with her on that. 100% agree.
Right.
100% agree.
But like, when I'm yelling at the TV, Shaheen, lose Letters from Home, I beg of you.
Were you saying that?
Kind of, just because I know that Letters from Home is it's a little cursed.
Yeah.
Little cursed. Specifically, all I really think of is like the Noel specifically, but I know it's happened many. Also, like way back, that was the family visit. Judd lost or won it in Guatemala. That was, I think, the first time I was like, wow, it's brutal. This is a brutal show. Not the first, but I just was like, don't win it, because I do think people get upset at this one.
You know what? I agree with that. And fortunately, Shaheen didn't get too much. I mean, obviously Mitch was upset, but Mitch was upset, and maybe Joe would have lost immunity, and then they could have gone after Joe. But I'm thinking, if Shaheen made a mistake, did he just bring the wrong people? Should he have brought Eva instead of Joe? Would that have changed anything?
I think it would have really upset Joe. I think he would have been very happy for Eva, but I think he would have been really, really upset Joe would have been really, really upset with him. I think that maybe would have changed. I think the big thing is, like, because didn't Mitch voted for him, right?
Mitch voted
for Shaheen.
Mitch voted for Shaheen. Yeah, we got to talk about Camila vote for Mitch too. But yeah, Mitch voted for Shaheen.
Great. So I don't know, because I really don't think that Mitch voting for Shaheen is coming from, like, I can't believe you brought Joe. Like, I think it all is coming from a strategic point. But, like, maybe, like, if Shaheen chose, Kyle and Eva, I think the moments would have been pretty much the same. I think the big thing here that kind of buried him was, talking to Kyle. So if he had Eva, that replacement, he still would have talked to Kyle. But I think people are just going to get mad no matter what. If it's you, if it's not you, I think people are going to be upset, and they're going to find a way to be upset.
What about if he takes Camila instead of Kyle, and it's Camila, Joe, and Shaheen?
That would have been very.
I think that's the only one, because then maybe Kyle doesn't come up with the idea to get rid of. I mean, I would assume that Kyle and Camila were both looking at Shaheen as an issue going down the line.
Yeah,
but Kyle doesn't have that moment to approach Camila with, and then Camila is. I don't know. Does Camila still go after Shaheen at that point?
That's very interesting. That could have been a moment where Shaheen and Camila really work together tightly. What if in this moment they actually are like, well, Kyle is doing a lot. Maybe Camila turns on Kyle here. You know what I mean? Like, having that long away from camp, that long away from somebody, and we know that Shaheen and Camila are working together already. Maybe that's when, Dakota says the family visits / letters wake people up. Maybe that's when they realize, hey, let's do this thing. And Kyle is the big threat here. And it's not like, is Kyle Shaheen in this scenario? Where they figure out a way to get him out.
I don't think so. I don't think Camila turns on Kyle. I would be pretty surprised if that happened. But I do think that if Camila's there, it might not have been a sure thing that Shaheen's the plan. Right. Maybe they take a shot at Eva. I do think, like, 6 is such a huge vote, in my opinion. Like, think about, like, iconic 6 votes. Obviously, like, the biggest one I can think of off the top of my head is, like, Cambodia. But, like, 6 is huge. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to, like, who went last season at 6? Andy going. And, like, Rachel was the vote. Rachel plays an idol. Rachel's a big player. And then that's a big move on Rachel going into the end game. Before that, 46. Who was 6? Q goes out. Charlie pulls one over on Maria. That's a big vote. D getting Drew out in 45. Who's 44 and 6? Jamie. I was on the island during 44, so I don't really remember.
You have a much better memory than me. I don't know that I could easily pull out all of these. I don't know.
6 is always a big vote, because it's like you can tie out there,
especially when on a 26-day game, because I think 6 is what, 3 or 4 days left in the game.
It's day 23.
So 3 days left in the game.
Yeah.
And so that is 3 days is a long weekend. 3 days is nothing. And so I feel like also when you're literally that shortened time away from the end, you're like, wow, we're getting down to it. Let's start figuring it out.
Yeah, like, I think, I know people have been, being mean to Mitch online, like time to make a move. But for real, like 6 is like a big, it's, you go down to 5, there's a majority there. There's an easy majority at 5. I feel like 5 has the tendency to be kind of a straightforward vote a lot that we see, but 6 is really like a last big opportunity to shake things up. So I do feel like Kyle and Camila were always going to do something, but was it always going to be Shaheen? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And I think, I think this was a very interesting vote out because of the fact that, like, I said it earlier that I felt like Shaheen was going to win the game. And now I feel, and we also heard what I loved about this episode was I loved hearing from Shaheen specifically, when he was going through the players, how people were viewing people on the island. Because specifically Eva. And what I remember, and it was exactly what I thought, he basically said, like, no one's going to vote for Eva when she goes to the end. He didn't say it that crassly, but he kind of did say that. And I think also, 46 is still fresh in their mind. They remember Tiffany cheerleading for Kenzie, being like whipping those votes, using her social ties, her pull, just her, personality, to root for Kenzie over there on the jury. I think all of that was going in through their mind when, hey, do we want Eva doing that for Joe on the jury? Because she would. That's exactly what she would do. And I think that would be a very interesting thing where if Eva was on the jury, I do think that Joe would be my number one to win.
Yeah. And I do think that that's a very powerful position. Like if you have someone who's just your person on the jury, there's nothing you could say or do to, turn them. Does Eva have an argument if she gets to the end? Like I like to think I know, Shaheen kind of poo-pooed that in the episode, but I do think Eva has an argument. I think she has an uphill battle, definitely, she's being viewed as lieutenant to Joe, right? And being kind of the second in command. But people win in that role. I'm thinking Sophie Clark, right? And coach. Now, does Eva have that in her to, throw Joe under the... I think for her to win in a final tribal situation, she needs to throw Joe under the bus in some capacity. Say, look, I wanted Joe out front leading and, doing that. And I played into the strength and loyalty, blah, 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 blah. I'm a big Eva fan. I like Eva a lot. She's been getting some unnecessary shit online this season.
Yeah.
And like, that sucks. I don't like that. But she's been very, I think she's done a really good job at keeping that group together for as long as she has. And she's also been sitting on a lot of goods.
Yeah.
I think she should use those goods in some capacity.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish it happened this episode. But
yeah,
I would really like to see Eva make Final Tribal. And just, I want to see the pitch. Like, she's got to differentiate herself from Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they're both sitting there, or if Joe's out, she is a champion on the jury. That, Joe is potentially a very persuasive person for her if he's on the jury.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think vice versa. I think if Joe's on the jury, he's going to be rooting and cheering Eva along. Having your number one on the jury is so helpful because, again, and same thing with Kyle and Camila. If Kyle and or Camila is at the finals and one of them is on the jury, the other one is going to be able to back everything up. And be like, yep, that's exactly how that went down. Yep, that's exactly how that went down. I just think that it's a very, interesting scenario because of how like duos are so, tight.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Eva going to Final Tribal, I think would be very interesting. And I would love to hear what she has to say. And I'm just like, really, I don't know, because I think Eva to me is reminding me of Xander from 41, where I think that we're seeing her game a lot more than the other players are seeing it. And so that's why I think when she goes to the end, it's not going to be, her argument is not going to be huge. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think the perception is slightly different.
You're probably like, obviously, like huge casuals, I think, are big fans of Eva, just, based on, what she's been able to do as being the first openly autistic survivor contestant on the show. Like, I think that's been huge. Like, personally with me, like, I have a couple students of mine, in my theater classes that, couple may have similar, may have autism as well. And I think that I've seen her able to connect with so many people. And I know, like, she's just been great to have on the TV for people.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. She's been getting so much unnecessary hate on the internet for like literally no reason, because the thing about Survivor is people want a good show.
Yeah.
And they then think that a good show means somebody's a good game, right? But when we think of really good winning games, I'm not thinking of the most chaotic seasons. Typically, I'm not thinking of, Bob from Gabon. I'm not thinking of that. What I'm thinking of is Kim Spradlin, is Boston Rob, is these players who are able to control things. And I don't think that necessarily means the other players around them are bad. Maybe for Boston Rob, they're not the best, but but I do think that there is a way to get people to want to work with you and play a dominant game while also basically gaslighting people into thinking that they also are playing a good game. And I think that is these dominant, but I don't think that's super fun for us to watch. Because we get to see the confessionals. We get to see what everybody's saying. We get to see the edit. The other players don't get to see that. And if somebody is good at basically gaslighting people, or at least within the game, into thinking like hyping them up, thinking that they're actually making these moves, all that stuff, that is a good gameplay, even if it's maybe not super interesting for us to watch. And I think that the viewers are taking it out on the players. When it's going to be a good gameplay for somebody. Somebody's going home with $1 million.
Yeah. No, 1,000%. It's unfortunate because, it's almost, I wish we had like Big Brother live feeds on Survivor, but I'm also happy that we don't, just because it's, the internet being the internet. But yeah, there's so much that we miss out. And I think there's so much context clues filled in through exit interviews, which were awesome to have.
So good. So good. Okay. So before we go to a quick commercial, I do want to ask, and we'll get into some questions afterwards so that the floor is going to be open. I do want to ask do you have any predictions for the finale?
Predictions for the finale. I like, who do I think is going to win?
Yeah. You can say who you think is going to win, or maybe you like one or two people you think might the top two that are going to take the cake.
I think it's Kyle or Camila are gonna one of them is gonna win, and I think it's just gonna be them versus in a showdown. One of them or both of them in a showdown against Joe. I think if both of them get there against Joe, I don't think that's a great position for them. I think they really benefit off one of them going home. But I think I see Kyle or Camila winning.
I agree. I totally think it's one of them that's going to win. And I think you're right. I don't think it's going to be good if even if it's Joe, say they're sitting next to Mitch and them two, or Eva and them two. I don't think it's good for the two of them to be next to each other, because I think a lot of what they did was like behind the curtains. Yeah. And I think Kyle is going to say, hey, I convinced you to spread the rumor about Shaheen having an idol. And Camila's like, well, I was the one who originally said that Shaheen had an idol. And I feel like the two, like, I wouldn't necessarily say that they would bicker, but having contrasting views of their own game would hurt one, if not both of them. And I think that person in the middle might have the most straightforward story to tell the jury, and not have somebody like arguing, right? And so I think that one person might be able to take it if they're sitting there together. Sorry, I was reading a comment. Noah said, the only reason I struggle seeing Kyle and Camila winning is because the pre-merge edit showed so much Loggy and not much Siva.
That's a good point.
That is a good point. I would counter with that. We did not see much Erica Now, granted, Erica's tribe won a lot, but I think that's why a lot of people don't like Erica. I mean, other than the hourglass twist. But, I think that there are times where the more interesting storyline might be not on the island with the winner. And I think the people, Siva's tribe might not have been the most interesting tribe. It was 4 people against 2. And other than finding the idol, I don't think there was a lot of other drama or things that were going on over there. But I do get what you're saying.
Are we going to commercial break, or can we talk?
Go ahead.
Can we talk about Mitch, or we got to go to commercial and then
let's talk about Mitch.
All right. I'm always rooting for someone like Mitch. Obviously, internet's been frustrated with him as well, and I get that. I'm very invested since my journey on Survivor to see a Mitch succeed. You know what I mean? One of these people who's, viewed at the bottom for a considerable period of time and then turn it around at some point, right? And I thought we were getting close to Andy last season, and unfortunately we didn't get it. He got clipped. I'm an Andy stan. I would defend a lot of Andy's game. Now, with Mitch, I think that he's really close to the end. He needs some major upset to happen. He needs some major credibility coming over his way. He may be. Does Mitch have the least confessionals out of the people who are still there?
I think so.
I think so. I feel like we've seen the least of Mitch out of everyone left there. So there might be like a lot left on the cutting room table that we're just not seeing. And so my mindset has been, how can I see a Mitch win? Because I just want to see some person who's been at the bottom flip the tables and see something happen. If Mitch wins the next 2 immunities, if he wins the next 2 immunities and he puts himself in fire, can he win out?
I mean, maybe. If I think that there is no counting people, I think that there is still a lot of game to play in 3 days. I think that a lot can happen. I do think he would have to have a perfect. Okay. Also,
it would have to be perfect. Absolutely.
It would have to be perfect. But also, if Shaheen wants to get Mitch out, he's not an obvious GOAT. If that was the person that people want to get out, that was the other target, right? If it's somebody, yeah, he's still on the bottom, but he's not like a GOAT. He's not like somebody that people are like taking to the end. He's on the bottom, but people are. I think that the reason I say that, I think the internet thinks that he's a GOAT because of the edit he's getting. But like, if
I think people like Mitch
still going after him, there is something to that. And so if he continues to play and win and like win immunity and win another immunity and like win fire or something, yeah, I could totally see that happening.
Yeah, I really want to see more of him, just because I feel like one of the big problems with this season, and people I know have been pretty like down on this season, especially in the post-merge. I think the pre-merge is amazing. The post-merge has been a little bit slow, other than like the David vote and obviously this vote. Is that I want to see more of an edit for like the people who are at the bottom. I think that's why like at least 45 was, and obviously that's a self-serving statement, but that's why 45 is like, pretty, it's a well-received season, right? You're just seeing people at the top steamroll. It's like, I want to see the narrative from people at the bottom, and we just haven't seen it. Like you saw Mary, Star, and Mitch have all been kind of under-edited, and like Chrissy, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's like, I'm really looking forward to like, I'm hoping Mitch gets a long form exit interview because I want to hear it. Like it seems like he's been included in this 6 in some capacity, which is awesome. Like he's made some inroads. Like it sounds like when he said to Shaheen, when Shaheen was in the hammock, we always talked about getting to the 6.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to know what his end game is. Like I would like to see him upset something. If Mitch wins immunity and doesn't go, I think Mitch should be being voted out next based on the strategy of the other 4 left in the game. I would love to see him win immunity and see that shaken up.
I think that would be awesome. I think the thing that viewers always have to remember, which I think people forget often, is we're seeing an edit. And people are oh, what has this person done? This person hasn't done anything. This person hasn't done anything. Survivor is a 24/7 game for 26 days. We see 90 minutes. we see like 63 minutes or something of what people are what's going on, what's happening. So even if they're not receiving the edit, even if it's more of a social, everyone's doing something. No one is just sleeping 100% of the time. Everyone is making bonds. Everybody is talking. Everybody's moving. Everybody's making plans. Everyone's trying to win immunity. Like everyone's trying to do something. So it's not like people are just like sitting and doing nothing. They don't cast people on Survivor like that anymore.
No.
Maybe ever, honestly. So like people are always trying to make something happen. And so we're seeing the edited version to best represent the season, but also represent the winner in a good light. Maybe not a positive light all the time, maybe not 100% positive, but a good, overall snapshot of this winner's edit, of this winner's game, pardon me. So sometimes people do not play into that. And then that just is they get cut, and that stinks. But viewers have to remember that that's not necessarily their game. So, okay. I think we have some questions that we need to get to. So let me quickly jump to commercial. And then after that, it'll be time for a Survivor Social Hour where we talk about, go through some questions that y'all sent in. And if you have any questions for Jake or myself or the season or about the season or anything, make sure to send that now. But we'll see you right after this.
What's up, guys? I'm Todd Herzog, the winner of Survivor China, and I am here with Survivor Now podcast, the best source for Survivor information, to show off what I do for a living. So I make custom Funko Pops. If you haven't seen or heard, you can check it out on Instagram at Todd's Pop Shop, or you can message me, toddspopshop@gmail.com, to order your own. And if you mention this podcast, you will get $10 off and a free torch. So it's pretty freaking awesome. I'm going to show you a few right now. We've got Troyzan here, Phil from The Amazing Race, JLP, host of Australian Survivor, and look, little Charlie. Anybody you could possibly imagine or want yourself playing an LRG or an ORG, or just with your loved one or family or pets or anything like that, shoot me a message. I'm happy to make it. You also have the chance to win a free custom pop if you sign up for Survivor Now Podcast Fantasy League. So it's pretty awesome. And it's fun. Like, who doesn't want to be a part of that? So yeah, hit me up. Get your custom pops. It's great holiday gifts, great birthday gifts. We got a new season of Survivor right around the corner. I'm excited. I'm sure you're excited. Let's get this going.
All right, welcome back. It's time for Survivor Social Hour. Okie dokie. So we have a question that was sent in on TikTok. Ray asks, do you think Star will come back for season 50? Do you have any season 50 predictions? Do you think Star's on there?
I don't think Star's on there. I think Star Updates is on season 49, though. That's my bold prediction.
Oh my God, iconic. I love that. Star Updates is one of my favorite parts of this season. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, it's just so annoying. Like, we could have gotten more Star this season. Like, that was such a big...
Star is, yeah, Star is a huge, is huge. She's so funny and kind and like just such a good person. And I think that she was a great addition to the season. And I think we were really robbed of seeing more Star.
Agreed.
We love Star. Yes, agreed. We love Star. Dakota asks, who do you think is in Final Four Fire?
The fireman's going to be in Fire.
Yeah.
There's going to be so many jokes about the fireman being in Fire, right?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Joe's in Fire. Joe's in Fire. I think Joe's in Fire.
Now, I had a thought that it's Joe and Kyle because Shaheen said, how amazing would it be to beat the fireman in Fire?
Yeah.
And there was this kind of like light in Joe's eyes, like a light bulb or something. So I could see it being Joe and Kyle. I could see it being Kyle and Camila. I could also see it being Joe and Eva. And if it's Joe and Eva, this has been my tinfoil conspiracy theory hot take. Because we heard at the beginning of the season, he said he was going to give up his game. He would be willing to give up his game for Eva. I thought he was just going to step out of and not make fire and not compete, which I think would make Eva mad because I know that she's a competitor. But that was my tinfoil conspiracy theory from like episode 5, probably.
That he's just going to step out.
He's just going to not like try at the fire making and Eva will win.
I think like if we're writing the storybook of Survivor 48, you would write it that way. But like, I don't think you can sit in fire and be like, yeah, this person I met 26 days ago. And like, to be fair, when you're out on Survivor, it doesn't feel like 26 days. When you're on day 20, what's that, day 25, it feels like you've been out there 6 months. Like time feels different on Survivor. Like it feels like you like by day 7, it feels like you've been gone for 2 or 3 months. Like seriously. I don't think when you're sitting there, it's like the same thing. What did you say Franny was saying about a challenge? Like, oh, you should throw this challenge. Like you're looking at $1 million in the face. And as we've seen, Joe really thinks he can win. You know, like that's not, and he's got young kids at home. I don't think he'd throw fire, but I think Joe versus Eva would be, he might go to get in fire against Eva and then full-heartedly lose. I could see that potentially happening. I do think Joe's making fire. I think that. Yeah, I think Joe's making fire.
I think you're right. I think he is too. I think it'd be crazy if he lost because you know how we saw him build that big bonfire like episode 2, 3.
Was that in the episode or was that a secret scene?
No, I think that was in the episode because that's when Eva gave Joe the bracelet for his daughter. I think that was in the episode.
Survivor now. Joe's making fire.
I think you're right. Okay, so this is not a question, but an interesting comment that we got at the very, very beginning. Daryl said Kyle has been dragging Camila to the end.
No.
Is that how you view it, Jake?
No. Kyle's not dragging Camila to the end. I think they both acknowledge that they have a better shot with one of them being on the jury. And I kind of like how they're having that open, honest conversation about it. And I think they want to get to, fire and have one of them go. I think that's their perfect situation and probably how they view it. I don't think Kyle's been dragging Camila. I think, obviously we've heard through different avenues, like Camila's we heard it on the show too. Camila's making inroads with Shaheen. Camila was the one who was trying to do stuff with like Star and Mary and trying to like turn things, upside down. She wasn't able to do that. I don't think, is Kyle the voice in the big, strong people alliance? Yeah, Kyle's the voice in there, but I think they've strategically positioned themselves kind of on opposite ends of the island that they can work both ends, and I think it's worked for them very effectively. The move this episode doesn't work. Yeah, Kyle presented this idea, but we all know that I feel like, in Ted, correct me if I'm wrong, the Thomas boot was a little bit more of Camila, right? Like that took a lot of trust for Camila to give up. What was it, the block of vote or the extra vote?
She used her extra vote, I think it was.
Yeah. I think it's been an equal partnership. I think
Camila's been all of that happened. Like Kyle was saved because Camila was there. They thought that Kyle was the target. And because the California girls told Camila that. Camila was right there when they were going through his bag. Like Kyle was that trust started. And yes, Camila and Kyle both were like, yeah, we're not working together, whatever. And they built that up. But Camila was there in the beginning because, and like in technically the big part of that first alliance, which is why I feel like Camila was not, a part of this other alliance because she had already burned that part of that alliance to save Kyle. And then also, most of their plans don't work without both of them. And Kyle saved Camila, but Camila also saved Kyle. And Kyle used his own idol, right? But Camila figured it out. Camila figured out how to open it. So their partnership has been working together since the beginning. And Kyle probably would have been able to figure out the word thing at some point, but Camila was the one who ultimately helped him open it. And I think that saying that Kyle is dragging Camila to the end, the connotation there in my mind is that Camila's done nothing to this partnership. Camila has not added any value, which is not the case. Most of these things don't work if Camila is not there. And yes, again, Kyle saved Camila, but most of what they have done does not work without two people.
There's always value in someone in Survivor because typically, I mean, unless like they lose a vote, but like because they typically have a vote. Camila has brought more to the table, and I believe in the alliance than just bringing a vote, an extra vote for Kyle. I disagree with that. I think Kyle's gotten more confessionals, so it looks like Kyle's driving the ship a little bit more, and he has his hand in the dominant alliance. But I think she has her finger on the pulse of the bottom, and I think that's important as well. I think and we've heard it straight from Kyle's mouth how valuable Camila is.
Yeah.
It's just being a sounding board. Like, that's huge. Just having a sounding board. Let me tell you, playing alone sucks. And if you don't have if I had a sounding board, oh my God, like I'll stay up all night thinking of ways that things could have gone different. Just having a sounding board is huge. And she's more than a sounding board too.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some other questions. Chloe says, if the finale is Camila, Eva, and Mitch, who wins?
Camila. I think, Camila. Like, I think it's Camila, right? Or I'm sorry, Mitch, but I do think it's if Joe's on the jury, then you have it's Joe versus Kyle on the jury with who can champion their person more, and I believe Kyle would likely be more persuasive than Joe.
Yeah. And also, Shaheen, in his video that he did at Ponderosa before anybody else got there, he said he was rooting for Camila. So if Shaheen is saying that he's rooting for Camila, that means Camila already has a cheerleader at Ponderosa before Kyle even gets there. So that means then Camila has two people probably vouching for her, rooting for her, saying yes, asking her questions that will make her look good, maybe asking the other two people questions that will make them look bad. And I just don't see Eva having anybody like that other than Joe. And so I think that is a really big indication of at least where Shaheen's head lies. But I think that having maybe two people in there, would be really, really good for Camila.
Do you think David? I could see David championing Eva.
Really?
In that position, yeah. Because if David placed the majority of the blame on Joe, and Eva can make the argument of like, hey, I just had to, go along because, that's where the tide's returning.
Yeah.
I could see David being a champion for her.
I could see that. I think that's a very good point that I didn't think of. I think you're totally right. I think he could totally do that. So then now David and Joe versus Shaheen and Kyle. I don't know. Okay, we had an interesting question that this has been a big theme in my house. This is Ryan's conspiracy theory. Dakota said, do you think there could be a tie again? Joe versus Kyle or Camila? In our household, Ryan currently, his straw hat theory or whatever it's called is that it is a tie between Kyle and Joe, and Eva is the third person that is at Final Tribal Council, and Eva votes for Joe. That is what Ryan's theory is. It would be absolutely bonkers. I don't really see Joe getting 4 votes, though. I don't think Shaheen is a vote for Joe. I don't think David is a vote for Joe. Eva's not there, so Eva can't be a vote for Joe. I don't think Mitch is a vote for Joe. I don't think Chrissy is a vote for Joe. I don't think Camila is a vote for Joe.
I could see Joe getting Cedric, Chrissy. I could see Mitch sitting on the jury.
You think that Chrissy would vote for Joe? She was like so. I mean, maybe she's not like.
It felt like there was more beef between her and David.
That's true.
Because I if I remember specifically, Chrissy was also the one hyping Joe up during when Eva had that moment in the challenge of episode 5, and Chrissy was like, yeah, Joe, yeah. Because Joe, and she might have been out of the game long enough to, it just seemed like David may have been more of the lightning rod during the time Chrissy was still in the game.
Okay, sorry, you said so you think David, you think Cedric, Chrissy, who else?
Cedric, Chrissy, I could see Mitch, and the only reason I'm saying that is because, I think the thing is, like, if you're someone who's in the game saying, we need to get this person out, and then it never happens, and they're sitting at the end, and I'm on the jury, I'm like, well, you know what? F you guys. Like I said, like, let's get this person out. Like, you didn't, and they're getting my vote. And then, like, in that reality, if he can get those 3 votes, he needs one more. I don't see him getting married. I don't see him. Could he get Star?
I don't know. I don't think that Star necessarily likes either. No. I mean, I think she likes them. Sorry. I don't think that she necessarily has, a huge opinion without, the questions or whatever else on those 2 specifically. Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe she wouldn't vote for Joe because there seemed to have been some kind of like, when it was Star's episode, he like said something where he was like, it can't be her. Like they were like arch enemies or something, which I know is not the case.
Yeah, you're right.
But if Joe feels like that, then I feel like Star might also feel like that. So I feel like she would end up probably voting. I know we're talking about a tie. I could see Star voting for Eva. Even though Eva had the idol and then got the idol from her and then voted her out, I could still see Star voting for her. I think it's probably she'd probably most likely vote for Kyle, but
I agree. Let me throw something wild by you.
Okay.
I think there's a world, if Joe's in final tribal council, where Joe gets David's vote. I think there's a world where it happens.
What?
I think there's a world where it happens. I think, now it would take Joe apologizing to David and saying, David, I did go back on my word. Is Joe able to do that? I'm leaning towards no, because I don't think that's the way Joe views it. You know?
I think that's a really good hot take. I like that. And there is a world also, we know how David has been reacting online or whatever. There's a world that it could have just been like he is reliving it. And he is just reliving that pain. And maybe he ended up voting for Joe and he's like, I'm really upset I did because I clearly can see that he did go back on his word or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just think if Joe sticks his goes 10 toes down on I did break my word to you, David, and here's why. I think he's got to say, yeah, I did. Here's why I had to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Joe's going to do that. I think there is a world if he did do that, he could get David's vote.
I agree. I like that hot take. I think that's very interesting. Okay. I have, this is a question. This is from Lexa. This is an interesting question. This is a little pointed. Jake, how do you feel about Joe and Eva were presented as heroes and then villains? Do you think that the fans say they want villains and then complain when they get them?
Yeah, I think people do, right? Like, heroes, villains, like I don't think there's like any what Jeff has said something recently, like we don't cast like heroes or villains anymore, right? Yeah. Like that's not something we do. But like evidently people are going to feel a certain way about people. Like, when last season, when Rome is following Saul around the jungle, we're going to say, yeah, Rome's being a villain right now. But they're just easy labels that we throw out there that it makes fun. It makes it more fun, right? You could say like, I don't know, typically the winner's given a hero edit, right? Or like, if Joe got edited as a hero the first half of the season, and now he's been, we're seeing the highlighted moments. Joe's being paranoid. Joe's going back on his word, and he's a villain now. I don't think there are heroes or villains in Survivor. They're people. There's like certain behaviors that are highlighted, And like, obviously the editors are trying to tell the story of what happened and make they're framing things that happened out there. You know, they can't fit 24 hours out there. I think I got away from the question, but
well, I think here's the thing. I don't necessarily agree that Joe and Eva have started out as heroes and then have turned into villains. I think that the internet sentiment towards them has changed because they're in a dominant alliance. And I think people, just like how I said earlier in the episode, people don't like when people say that they're going to be honest and then they don't. They're not. That's just, and that goes for the fans as well. And I don't think Joe did anything out of animosity. He's playing the game, and I think he saw the game coming for him, or the facts coming for him, and he saw what was going on, and he realized what he had to do. His big mistake was saying that he was honest, and he never went back on his word.
Yeah.
Right? That is just not, that was his mistake. But I think that how the fans have viewed him started off as a hero, and I think the fans are upset that, no one's going after him. Why is no one taking him out? He keeps winning immunities, like all of these things. And I think more people are just upset. I don't necessarily see them as villains. I don't think that people can be a villain because people are multifaceted. And that's what I think when Jeff says they don't cast heroes and villains, they just cast people. People are multifaceted. No one is 100% good and 100% bad. And so, I think we're seeing multiple levels of people, multiple different, ways that how people go about doing things. And so I think that the edits now are showing a more fully formed person rather than a character, which is what I think that they used to kind of focus on.
And I think too, like another thing, like, I was a poli-sci major in college. Like, people talk about this all the time. This might be somewhere in media. Someone said this once. The only thing people hate worse than liars is hypocrites. And I think Joe, when you preach loyalty, you put yourself in a hypocritical spot. Like, you're going to run into, looking like a hypocrite a little bit, because you have to vote people out in the game of Survivor, when you use that. And so, here's Kyle and Camila entirely fabricating a story. And, we praise that in the game of Survivor because the game of deception. There's deception in the game, but hypocrisy is not a strategy. And so people really don't like that. And I don't think Joe is, we're all hypocrites in some capacity. I don't think Joe is intentionally attempting to be hypocritical, but I think that's just like why sentiment has turned.
I totally agree. Okay, this is not necessarily a question. This was earlier on, but something that we talked about a little bit earlier. Bro from Noah, I saw the promo and it spoiled a decent amount. Was not ready for that. Jake, have you seen this new CBS promo?
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony. I watched it. If you put a spoiler tag on it, it's not Anthony's fault. I watched it anyway.
I watched it. I mean, I watched it mainly because I feel like I'm like a Survivor reporter who needs to know what's going on in the Survivor world. I don't go on like Survivor Spoiled. I don't do any of those kinds of things. But if CBS is making a promo with spoilers in it, I do have to go out of my way to watch it because I need to like be in the know of what's going on. That's crazy.
They done messed up that one.
That was wild. So if you don't want to be spoiled, if you're watching CBS, if you're watching a TV, I don't think it's online other than
it's on
Instagram, like not by CBS's account.
Yeah.
So there is a spoiler ahead of it. But oh my goodness gracious. Like, basically, if you guys don't know, there's a shot of people walking into tribal council and we can see somebody walking behind Shaheen. So seemingly we know who gets voted out fifth. And there is a very blatant shot with somebody wearing a hidden immunity, or not hidden, an immunity necklace. Do you think they do this on purpose to drum up drama, or do you think that it was a mistake?
It was a mistake. It was a mistake. And like, the reality is most like, we're going to catch it because we're crazy and we love this show too much. No one else is going to know.
No one else is going to know. Yeah. And I think that is, I think the thing to remember that I was reminded by somebody the other day was a lot of the people that work on Survivor aren't necessarily fans of Survivor. right? So like people who edit Survivor, they're not necessarily, it is not going to be a given that they are a Survivor superfan. They probably don't like Survivor. They probably avoid it as much as they can because that's their job, right? Like I work at restaurants. I don't like to go to my restaurant when I'm not, when I'm not working, because that's where I work. And I know it's a good restaurant, right? I could go and enjoy it and probably get a discount, but that's where I work. I don't really like to go there. People don't really like to go where they work when they're not working. And so I feel like if you are somebody who works on Survivor, probably watching the show feels a little bit like work.
I do feel like, is there, to be fair, because like I feel like the people who work on Survivor are very passionate, like about what they do. So I'm, and not that you're saying they're not passionate, but like I think are the people who do the commercials like different than?
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like, is it?
Yeah.
Because in my mind, the people who edit Survivor are huge fans of Survivor. That's why they're always trying different things and innovating, right? It's nothing really new tried in commercials for the most part.
That's true.
Right? And like, when you're thinking about commercials, it's like they throw in a lot of songs that they probably need to get approval for and all that aren't necessarily going to be in the episode. So I might blame CBS more than Survivor itself, is what I would assume. It is my assumption. I could be wrong. Survivor might edit the commercials and, they put, the new guy on there who's like, oh, yeah, whatever. There's 48 of these. Shit. You know what I mean? Like, I tend to think that it's someone at CBS.
I think that's a very good distinction. You're probably 100% right. Yeah, I think that's crazy. I will say I'm slightly more excited about the finale now that I've seen this promo, not necessarily because of who was potentially voted out 5th, but because of who potentially has won immunity. I don't want to spoil it here. You can find it online. If you want it, you can find it. And I just won't spoil it for the people who don't want it. But I think it was very crazy, very funny. And I just had to bring that up. I'm dead. Okay, last question before we get to some of the other fun things of the episode. Lexa, again, had a great question. Asked Jake, as a 0 vote finalist, do you not to remind you, but do you think you see your edit now in the other 0 vote finalists, like potentially Mitch? What other finalist edits from last season do you relate to the most?
From last season, I know he wasn't a 0 vote finalist, but Andy, right? Like I felt like Andy was going on the same trajectory. Obviously, that didn't happen, and he was able to pull off an amazing move. But I've told when I was out there filming, like when you're down in the last day, Final 5 doesn't go my way. I tried my best at Final Tribal, but like writing was kind of on the wall, right? And so in those moments, I've always thought that Owen, something that I always told myself is like, because when you're in, and I'm probably getting away from the question here, but Owen, because he's someone who's, he's Charlie Brown. He kept trying to kick the football, and that was shown. And like, honestly, the one thing that I said I wanted to get shown when I came back from filming is like, I don't got to be a great Survivor player. I'm not, I think the record shows that. But, I think if you get the opportunity to be out there, as long as you're trying, and like, I wanted people to know that like, I did my best and I threw everything against the wall. I may have threw a few too many things at the wall, potentially, but, I think you make the most of it with what you can.
I also think saying that you're not a very good Survivor player is selling yourself short, because I think every season of Survivor is different. I know this is not a very good comparison, but I have the Castaways game here, and which is it's like a fan made, very good, like earlier version of the Tribe Has Spoken. I think it's slightly better than the Tribe Has Spoken because more people can play. But it's a longer it's a longer game. Like it takes like 4 hours because more people can play.
Yeah.
But I have played that twice, something like that. I won the last time I played, and the first 2 times I was out really early. And it's like, obviously it's not the same because I'm not really playing Survivor, but in the end you do kind of strategize and you do kind of like do the thing. But you're playing a character, you're not necessarily playing yourself. Right. But I think the thing that I love about Survivor, and you put out the same 18 people again after you play, you're going to get a different result. You're not going to get the same result every single time. And I think that every single person who gets on Survivor is is a good Survivor player, has the potential to be a good Survivor player with the right surroundings, with the right people, the right original tribe, with the right whatever. So I don't sell yourself short. I think that
look, I think I think I could be better. Like, I'm not trying to say like I don't think I would do garbage on like a second outing, right? Like, I think I have the potential to play a better game than I did, right? But 17 people lose.
Yeah.
17 people lose, and that's okay. And that's okay.
And that's okay. That's why it's a crazy show, because 18 people go out there thinking they're going to win.
Yeah.
And 17 people lose. That's crazy. It's crazy. Well, thank you all so much for sending the questions. As I always say, it's one of my favorite parts of the episode because I think it gets to really fun, down some really fun roads. But now it's my favorite part of the episode, which is Kara's sweet thing in the pod. Kara's not here with us. She's here in spirit, obviously, because we're just still doing the sweet thing. If you don't know, Kara hosts a podcast with her cousin, and it's called the Sweet Things Podcast, and they talk about, wonderful sweet things. And basically in Survivor, we can't necessarily do like sweets like food. So it can be food. A sweet thing can be food. It can be a moment. It can be an item. It can be anything. It's ranged. The sweet things of the past have ranged quite a bit. Jake, do you have a sweet thing? Would you like me to start?
I know my sweet thing. I know my sweet thing. Episode title. Shaheen with the episode title. Icarus time. Love the title. I went and looked at like old episode titles, and I'm like thinking it's like Icarus time is up there. Like, I'm like, that's like Martyr Approach naming, right? Not saying it was the same quality episode. Martyr Approach is one of the best episodes in the series, but with the title, it's a great title.
Oh yeah, that's so good. That's a really, really good one. Mine is also Shaheen based. And mine is his legs.
That was really funny.
Mine is his legs. How could you not? They do belong in the museum. Do you think that Survivor should do more leg-based challenges and less arm-based challenges?
Yeah, bring back the what's the one? They did it a couple times. I think they did it in San Juan del Sur in Cambodia, but where they have to like stack the blocks with their feet. Like,
yep.
I'd rather do and do that again. Like, I think the challenges have gotten a little bit stale.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit stale, a little bit repetitive. And I understand when you got if you're same cycle, like 47, 48, some are gonna get reused. I'm okay with that. Like, that doesn't bother me. But I'm saying like something that we haven't seen in a long time. Final immunity challenge of 46. Awesome. Brand new. Loved it. Bring some stuff back.
I love a new challenge. I think that they need to do more leg stuff. Like do that squat one. I don't know if that was on Australian Survivor or on American Survivor, but there was one where you like squatted and you had to basically hold a wall squat. And the person who held the wall squat the longest won.
Oh, is that like the final for Guatemala?
Yes, basically. Okay. Yeah. Just, because I feel like we've had like 9 arm challenges this season.
They're all, they're
loving David. They're like, here, David, have another. Here, David, have another. Like,
no one tell Charlie I said this, but like, how many grip strength challenges do we need? I feel like we had a couple, right?
Yeah. I think, hot take, they're gonna be like, oh, Charlie said, Evie, in 41 said that thing about the, memorizing the challenges, right? Yeah. And then Carson went and, knew the challenges, and that was really big. And I think that kind of spurred them to make new puzzles. Now I think Charlie said the grip strength thing, they'll realize, hey, people are focusing too much on their arms. We gotta start on the legs. Season 41, you heard it here first. Leg challenges out the wazoo.
There you go.
You heard it here first.
You know what? You know how you're going to figure out who's on Survivor 50? You have to shake every alumni's hand that you see. Whoever has the strongest handshakes are on 50. Because I feel like the narrative right now is like you practice puzzles and you practice grip strength. Whoever has the strongest handshakes, they're on 50.
Write that down, everybody. That is the T. That's the T. That's exactly how you're going to find out. Tom Westman. Oh, no, weak handshake. No way. Amanda Kimmel. She's there. Wow. She put the hand. Amanda Kimmel. Could you believe I would die? Literally, I was talking about
break my hand, please.
But yeah, literally. Oh my God. Like if she was on that like I talked about it with somebody. I was like, I can't even think about it. I don't want to talk about it because if it happens, I will die. I will die because
Amanda?
yeah, if Amanda's on 50.
She played like twice. I mean, I feel like she played twice. And
well, the last time she played was 15 years ago.
I know. Like,
you know how much a person changes in 15 years? You know, the last time we saw, I love Suri. The last time we saw Suri play, now granted, I know she hasn't played Survivor. I mean, she's played, we're going to play Australian Survivor, but hasn't played Survivor since what? In like 10 years? No, like
2017, I think.
Yeah, so like 8 years. But we also saw her play a bunch of other games recently. I love Suri. I don't need that. I need to see Amanda. I need it.
Like, if Survivor doesn't get Amanda, traders, you know what to do.
Traders, you know what to do. You know what to do. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Ugh, I would die. Okay, it's time for the final award of the episode, which is the Social Butterfly Award. All right, we're near the end of the season. Obviously, we only have the finale left. So typically, it's the Social Butterfly only in this episode, only what they did in this episode. But I think it is about time. It's so close to the end. Who do you think, you can take their whole game into account? It doesn't necessarily have to just be this episode. I don't think my answer would change either way, though.
You can take their whole game into account. I mean,
yeah, if you want. You don't have to. We can.
No, we can. I mean, it's Kyle. Like, this was Kyle's episode.
This was Kyle's. I think Kyle, either way, has played one of the better social games that we've seen. Kyle has also gotten a lot of hate. Kyle and Camila, because for a while they were like, "What are you guys doing? You're not doing anything." I think that Kyle, and I have told him this, I think he has one of the most well-rounded games that we've seen on Survivor. I think he's loyal, but also cunning. I think he's smart, but also funny, that it kind of cuts that a little bit. I think he's physical. He won an immunity challenge. He's social. He's got roads with like everybody. I think he has truly one of the more well-rounded games that we've seen in recent times.
I agree. And I think also too with Kyle, and like you kind of see this with like, I believe Joe and Eva said that, they're not worried about Kyle and Camila. Did they say that this episode?
I think so.
Yeah, I feel like Kyle has like all the soft skills, but it's not like over oppressive to the point where like everyone's like, "Oh shit, watch out, Kyle's coming." You know what I mean? But it's definitely, you can see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I just think that he's amazing. Who would you give? Would you give it to Kyle, or would you give it to somebody else this episode?
For the Social Butterfly? Kyle.
I know you said it's Kyle. Okay, Kyle.
It's Kyle. Like, he pulled off the move. Obviously, Camila did her part in the plan as well. It was a two-pronged approach, but he came up with it. He got the info for Shaheen that he needed to mobilize and, remove Shaheen from the game.
And I think this would not have worked if Joe didn't trust Kyle, because obviously Joe trusted Shaheen a lot. Joe and Shaheen were each other's number ones, California girls. And so if Joe didn't trust Kyle, this would go nowhere. And so I think that the social bond, the bond he had with Joe, because of how he's playing the social game, made this move work. If it was just Camila coming up to him, I don't think it would have worked. But that relationship is what sold it.
Yeah, I think it's Kyle's relationships. Like, if Kyle doesn't have Camila, you can't pull off the move. But if Camila doesn't have Kyle, that move's not happening.
Yeah, I think you need both people in order for this move to really get pulled off. But I think the first step was that relationship. And and it was a great move. It was a really great move. And I'm very excited for the finale. I'm usually not excited for the finale. Hot take. I think the finale is one of the worst episodes of the season. I usually, which is very silly. I don't think there's a lot of, typically, not every time. Typically, I don't think there's a lot of big game that is played at the end. The majority of the time. And so I feel like, I go to a Bryson One event and it's the one time where I'm like having conversations while the episode is on. I'm way more okay with missing, a couple of words here and there for the finale than other episodes.
I kind of agree. Like by the time you get to finale and you're watching a finale, I don't want to miss words when they're in Final Tribal Council. Like I want to hear the arguments in Final Tribal. But so far as like, the vote 5, like I don't really need to hear it. You know what I mean? Like I kind of like what they did last. I liked it. I didn't like what they did last season with the split finale. You had like 5 and 6 and then Final 4. We got to see more of the Genevieve boot, which like I enjoyed, and I'm happy that it didn't get kind of poo-pooed over in a typical Final 5 finale. But also like I didn't really care until Final Tribal for like their actual finale last season.
Same. And I think that, Jeff says that the fire making is very fun and really crazy. It is sometimes, but also sometimes I just listen to what the crowd is what's happening with the crowd at the Bryson When, and I just kind of go along with that. And once it's almost over, I will look up and watch. Fire making, I think I don't like forced fire. That's not a hot take.
No, it's not a hot take. And honestly, like I'm not gonna talk shit about fire, but I am right now. I loved it. I needed it. Right. Like it's like personal to me where I really liked it with my time out there. But thinking about it, I don't really, I wish it wasn't every season. Like I kind of wish they did it every other season. I don't want it kind of thrown on or tacked on last minute. Like, like they did in 35, right? Like I don't want you get to the Final 4 and you're like, oh shit, there's fire this season. I wish it was like, I don't know, something at the merge. Like if it was like the merge and Jeff is like, guys, we're flipping a coin, or something, or someone wins a challenge and it's like, hey, do you want fire to be here this season or something? Like there's something else they can do with it because it's always fun and I think it's fun to watch. Like I do like watching it, but knowing it's coming, I'm a little bit like whatever at this point.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why it worked my season, and I know this is self-serving, is that it was kind of like narrative driven, right?
Yes.
Like that happens, like, my story's over, right? Like it was a nice bookend, and it's a nice bookend for editing on, telling the stories of people in the game. But is an actual mechanic, like I don't know how much more we get out of it by doing it every season.
Yeah, I agree.
Tomorrow, but I just said it.
Okay, last question I have for you before I let you go. I know I already asked your predictions. Do you have a boot order? Like, do you want to put it in official 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or do you want to hold?
I kind of want to hold just because I have seen that commercial.
That is true. I forgot.
I don't really want to.
That is true.
I don't really want to.
Spoil it for the people. I understand. And we can't even do one. Okay, fine. I'll ask. Who do you think is going to be in Final 3? Because I know you said you think that Kyle or Camila is taking it. Do you think it's because I think Final 3 is gonna be
Eva's gonna be. Sorry, I think
Eva. Yeah, I think Eva's gonna be there. I honestly think it's gonna be Eva, Joe, Kyle.
I can see. Yeah, I feel like that because in my mind, I don't see Kyle and Camila being there together.
Me neither.
Because I think just where they've acknowledged that we're not going to go together. I think in that world, like I don't see them both there. I think it's Kyle, Eva. Yeah, and then it would Mitch or Joe.
Yeah. I can't wait. Well,
I'm
Jake,
excited.
thank you. It's going to be so fun. We're going to have a new winner of Survivor in like 3 days. I'm just like so over the moon. Jake, before you go, where can we find you? Is there anything you want to tell the listeners about? Anything that we can do? We want to, check out?
Follow me on it. I finished Finding Nemo today. So congratulations to Finding Nemo, the musical. Congratulations to
that's awesome.
All the actors and stage crew who are in the show. They did a great job today. They put a lot of hard work in. That's over. But yeah, follow me on Instagram. I'm not doing anything. If you need to get divorced in Easton, Mass, hit me up on Instagram or
hit him up.
I'm not putting my law firm out there, but you know, you can find it if you Google me, to be honest.
Well, thank you so much, Jake, for joining us. It's always so much fun. We love having you on the show. It's like been a seasonal staple since your season, and we just love having you. I love to hear your takes. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tag. I always love talking with you.
Thank you, everybody. We are gonna wrap up here. As a reminder, we are going to be doing a very special live episode on Wednesday, I believe, from Bryce and Wen. So it's going to be a pre-show. I know, it's very exciting. So make sure to keep an eye out on that. Check out Survivor Now Podcast at Survivor Now Podcast on Instagram to stay up to date on that, as well as all of the finale shows that we've got coming this week. We've got so much cooking. This is my second to last pod with Survivor Now, which is making me very sad. I'm very happy that you're here with me, Jake, to kind of like my penultimate Survivor Now episode. But, you know, enjoy the finale, everybody. And we will see you guys next week. Don't forget to stay social. Have a lovely day.